recent execution of 4 death row convicts in Edo State has once again stirred up the death penalty debate in the country. Many human rights groups have condemned the move by Governor Soyele, especially against the background of pending appeals filed by the convicts challenging the signing of their execution warrants. This edition of Law Weekly explores the death penalty debate further with someone who has also done a lot of work fighting the rights of some death row inmates. Mrs Funmi Falana and her husband, Femi Falana, have indeed initiated a number of cases in court, and judgment is still pending in a number of them. But Mrs Falana will join me on the program shortly to give her perspective to this whole death penalty debate. Before that conversation, though, let's do a quick recap of some of the top legal stories in the news. I'm Shola Soyele, and you're watching Law Weekly on Channels Television.
We counted all the votes, and the chairman, Governor Chibuike Amechi of Rivers State, emerged winner. He continues with a total vote of 19 against the governor of Plateau State, who secured 16 votes.
We begin with the court case on the outcome of the elections of the Nigerian Governors Forum, which is generating so much controversy. Last week, Tuesday, hearing on the case was stalled after 2 senior advocates of Nigeria announced appearance for a factional chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, Governor Jonah Jang of Plateau State. Mr. Paul Erokoro and Mr. Tayo Yetibo both filed different court process, claiming to represent Governor Jang in the suit filed by Governor Babatunde Fashola of Lagos State, urging the court to stop the Plateau State governor from parading himself as the chairman of the forum. Governor Fashola, on his part, was popularly represented by former Attorney General of Lagos State, Professor Yemi Oshibaju. Trial Judge Justice Peter Afren adjourned the matter to Wednesday, July 3rd, for the Jang faction to sort out the issue of legal representation. Staying in Abuja, the federal government has rearranged the group news editor of leadership newspapers, Mr. Tony Amokiodo, and the political reporter, Mr. Chibuzo Okaibe, on an 11-count charge of conspiracy and forgery. This rearrangement before an Abuja High Court is coming less than 2 months after the government initially dropped its previous charges against both men. Following their not guilty plea, Justice Anthony Musale admitted them to bail in the sum of 500,000 naira each, with 1 surety in like sum. Hearing was then fixed for the 16th of July. The federal government has also formally moved against 3 Lebanese suspected to be involved in arms dealing. The charges against the 3 men followed the discovery of a cache of arms in Kano State, allegedly belonging to the accused persons. The 3 people charged are Mustafa Fawaz, Abdullahi Tahini, and Talal Ahmad Roda. A 4th person, Fauzi Fawaz, who is still at large, was charged in absentia. According to the charges, the suspects are also members of Hezbollah military wing, an international terrorist organization. Mustafa Fawaz and Fauzi Fawaz were owners of the popular Amigo supermarket and the Wonderland amusement park, both in Abuja, were accused of knowingly permitting a meeting connected with an act of terrorism to hold in their premises, while Abdullah Tahini was accused of coordinating the activities of Hezbollah in Nigeria. The accused persons have, however, pleaded not guilty, and Justice Adeniyi Ademola has fixed the 8th of July to hear their bail applications. In Lagos, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, last week Monday rearranged the Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly, Honorable Adeyemi Kuforiji, and his personal assistant, Oyebode Atoyebi. Both men were rearranged before Justice Ibrahim Buba of the Federal High Court over their alleged involvement in laundering over 500 million naira belonging to the Lagos State House of Assembly. They both pleaded not guilty to an amended 54-count charge and were granted bail in the sum of 1 billion naira each. They have since met the bail conditions, and trial in the case will commence in September after the court's vacation. One person for whom there is no bail, however, is suspected fraudster, businessman and lawyer Fred Ajudua. Justice Olubunmi Oyewole of the Lagos High Court Ikeja last week Thursday dismissed his bail application, since there was insufficient evidence put before the court to justify the granting of the bail. Fred Ajudua and one Charles Ore were arraigned by the EFCC in 2003 for allegedly defrauding two Dutch businessmen of $1.69 million, that's about 252 million naira. The case, which had proceeded to trial, was stalled after Ajudua, who was then granted bail on medical grounds, absconded and only voluntarily reappeared after 8 years. Justice Oyewole rejected his application to quash the charges, dismissed his bail application, ordered his remand at the Kirikiri Maximum Prison, and instead ordered an accelerated hearing of his case, which is scheduled to commence on the 8th of July. And on the foreign scene, a Milan court last week Monday found former Italian Prime Minister and leader of the People of Liberty Party, Silvio Berlusconi, guilty on charges of abuse of office and paying for sex with an underage prostitute, Karima El Marouk, a Moroccan nightclub dancer. He was sentenced to 7 years in jail and banned from public office for life. Despite the prison sentence, 76-year-old Berlusconi will remain free and be allowed to participate in politics while he appeals the verdict handed down by a panel of judges in the Milan court. Under Italy's three-tier legal system, he will be able to file 2 appeals against the sentence and will not serve any jail time until a final verdict is handed down by the Italian Supreme Court, which could take years.
You see, life has just got easier. You stay connected to Channels TV, where news and innovations are shaping our world. Simply log on to channelstv.com to get the breaking news. Browse the homepage according to what matters to you. Tap on the extended coverage of business, sports, politics, lifestyle, infotech, entertainment, health, world news, and lots more. Click on the live link and see the news in real time. Do you want to watch the latest video of the day? It's just a click away. Friend us on Facebook, YouTube, follow us on Twitter, Google+, participate in Channels TV poll and share your comments. It's a website you can talk to. Your voice will be heard.
channelstv.com. The news at your fingertips.
The recent execution of 4 death row inmates by officers of the Nigerian Prison Service in Edo State after their death warrants were signed by the state government, despite global appeal from human rights activists, has once again pushed to the front burner the debate over the use of the death penalty as punishment for crimes. Capital punishment, the death penalty or execution, is the sentence of death upon a person by the state as a punishment for a crime. Capital punishment has in the past been practiced by most societies. Currently, only 58 nations actively practice it, and 96 countries have abolished it. The remaining have not used it for about 10 years and sometimes allow it only in exceptional circumstances such as wartime. The United Nations General Assembly in 2007 and 2008 adopted non-binding resolutions calling for a global moratorium on executions, with a view to eventual abolition. According to the UN, the right of man to life is the most fundamental of all human rights. Though the right to life is a universal right, various countries have however placed some limitation to enjoyment of this right by their citizens. In Nigeria, such limitations include the imposition of the death penalty. The death penalty is provided for in Section 33, subsection 1 of the Nigerian Constitution. Specifically, the section provides, "Every person has a right to life, and no one shall be deprived intentionally of his life save in execution of the sentence of a court in respect of a criminal offense of which one has been found guilty in Nigeria." In the country today, some offenses are punishable by death. These include murder, treason, treachery, directing and controlling or presiding at an unlawful trial by ordeal from which death results, conviction for armed robbery, instigating an invasion of Nigeria, fabricating false evidence leading to the conviction and death of an innocent person, and aiding the suicide of a child or lunatic. Also in Abia, Akwa Ibom, Anambra, Ebonyi, Enugu and Imo states, kidnapping has become a capital offense. The introduction of the Sharia criminal law in some states in northern Nigeria in 2000 has widened offenses punishable by death. For instance, under Sharia law, death penalty can be applied for sexual crimes. In spite of the law and conviction of offenders by the court, It has been a long time since an official execution has taken place in Nigeria. Death Penalty Worldwide, a website that specializes in information concerning capital punishment globally, claims that while more than 2,600 persons were executed in Nigeria before 1999, only 22 have suffered the same fate since the return to civilian rule. In 2010 alone, there were 151 death sentences passed without a single execution. Quoting Amnesty International, the global human rights organization, Death Penalty Worldwide says that 9 persons were executed in Nigeria in 2003 and 7 in 2006, which were not announced to the public by the government. The last execution that was publicly announced was that of Sonny Yakubu Rodi in Kaduna in 2006.
And now to our interview segment. Mrs. Funmi Falana is the managing partner of Falana & Falana, a law firm where her husband, Femi Falana, is the senior partner. The firm has done a lot of work with death row inmates and particularly with upholding the fundamental rights of many oppressed Nigerians. Mrs. Falana joins me on the program now to give a perspective to this growing death penalty debate. The recent decision of the Edo State Governor signing the death warrants for the execution of 4 death row inmates is something that has continued to generate so much controversy. Now, as somebody who has done a lot of work on death penalty and the issues surrounding it, what do you make of this execution?
It's really unfortunate that such a thing happened in Edo State, for that matter, where we have our comrade Oshiomole, who is supposed to be human rights fellow, to have taken such a nasty lead, I'll call it. He had wanted to do this a few months ago, and a group of lawyers ran to court. We were able to obtain an order to stop him. And when the case went on, unfortunately, the order was discharged, and they rushed to the gallows before anything could be done. We were thinking of going on appeal, but before the appeal, yeah, it's a group of lawyers, right? And we also joined them. Where before any action could be taken at the Court of Appeal, he had done the execution. But you will recall that before this recent ugly scenario, there had not been any execution in Nigeria since 2006, and until this recent one, we didn't know we even have a hanksman in Lagos, in Nigeria. But unfortunately, it is sad to note that Nigeria is still one of the very few countries that has continued to retain this death penalty on our penal laws. We have a series of cases in court on this issue of death penalty. As a matter of fact, there is one on the Court of Appeal now, and we have about 4 or 5 others at the Federal High Court. In 2009 precisely, we filed a case for about 20 convicted men who are on death row. Some had been on death row for 25 years, 30 years, 18 years. Well, a series of from like 18 years to 30 years. We filed a case in court. And our point of argument in that case, and the case is still pending. One had been decided and we're on appeal. And our point of argument in that case is that, well, we are actually not even contending death penalty because it is still part of our penal system. But what we are saying is that if a man has been waiting for the hanksman for the past 18 years, 10 years, 20 years, and every time a man wakes up in the day expecting that he may be taken to the gallows for 10 years, for 20 years, for 30 years, that amounts to the height of torture and degrading treatment. And that could not have been in the contemplation of the sentence that was passed on him several years ago. The judge that passed the sentence could not have contemplated that the man would be waiting for the hangman for 20 years. So, in other words, if that man is executed today, the execution will be inconsistent with the intention of the sentence that was passed some years ago.
So it's the length of time of the waiting?
The length of time of the waiting amounts to torture. But that is not alone. We got, luckily in Lagos State, I want to say that as of today in Lagos State government cannot execute any man on that role because of the law, because of the case, the judgment of court we obtained. The case of Ajulu and 5 others versus the Attorney General of Lagos State. We went to court in that case, and the courts, in the judgment of the court, held that the death penalty as it is carried out as of today, death by hanging, is unconstitutional because it amounts to torture and inhuman treatment, degrading and inhuman treatment, and therefore it is unconstitutional, it is null and void. In other words, death penalty as of today in Lagos State has been struck down by the consequence and the outcome, implication of that judgment by Justice Olukoba of Lagos State High Court. In Lagos State, because the case is in Lagos State. Well, it is luckily in Nigeria, our laws here in Nigeria is one of the sources of law is self-decisis, judicial precedent, and it is binding. The judgment of the High Court in Lagos State is also binding on other high courts. Oh yes, but it may just be of a persuasive effect to other courts. Yes, and the Court of Appeal may try to depart from it. But we obtained a judgment of a court, Federal High Court, in one of the sister cases, that was cannot be said to be a judicial decision because the man was jiving here and there. Justice Achibonga, that was retired disgracefully. The man jived there and there, and what was his finding? He said, yes, it is true that if these people are executed as of today, it will amount to a human and degrading treatment, but because their sentence is still on the penal list, we should therefore appeal to the authority. That is not known to our law. It cannot be said to be a judicial decision, and we should therefore go and appeal that these people should. So we have gone on appeal, and that we should appeal and beg the authorities involved. That couldn't have been a judicial decision, but we are on appeal because nothing could be said to be a proper judicial decision.
So, of course, you wouldn't agree with the statement by President Jonathan urging governors to sign death warrants?
No, it is irresponsible. Now, I'm disappointed that the president of a country will be begging that governors should go and execute, sign death execution warrants when other presidents are clamoring that death sentence should be expunged from their penal code, from their penal laws. Our own president is begging governors to go and sign their warrants. It's irresponsible. It cannot be said to be a proper form of decongestion of our prison in Nigeria, because there are other ways that our prisons could be decongested. There are several awaiting trials. About 85%, we go on prison visits very regularly to give legal aids to prisoners, to people who are awaiting trials, and people in prisons. And we have discovered that about 85% of people who are in prison, who are making the prisons congested, are awaiting trials. People who have no reason to be there. They are not even people who are awaiting death sentence. They are, who have been sentenced. They are not even convicts. They are people who are awaiting trials. In other words, all we could do is to speed up our criminal justice administration system and polish it and make it more sensitive to administration of justice.
Now, it's interesting that you've mentioned the congestion of prison, because I know that that was one of the reasons given by the Edo State governor for signing this warrant. You don't think that that is any justification in any form?
I also know that that was one of the reasons given by the president. I am saying that that could not be a valid reason. And I am also sure that even if all the people awaiting trial, awaiting death sentence are executed today, the prison will still be, because they constitute a minute, a very small percentage of people who are in prison. The larger percentage of people who are in prison are awaiting trials.
Now, what about the arguments by some people that death penalty is in our law books anyway, so instead we should be focusing on reforming the laws instead of criticizing, the signing of these warrants for the execution of the Edo 4?
We have also taken steps along that line. We have put up proposal for the reformation of such laws. But we also know that part of reformation of the law could come from judicial precedents. And like I told you, our law here, the sources of our laws there, as one of them as the judicial precedent still decides this. In other words, when the decision of whatever is the decision of a court on an issue becomes the law on that matter, as long as the decision remains until a higher court pronounces on it, until a higher court sets it aside, that decision remains the law as it is on that point of issue. And therefore, the law as it is in Lagos State is that death sentence is unconstitutional by virtue of the case of James Ajulo and others by Justice Olukoba. We also have other cases. We have Adepeju and Edo State government on same issue. This Adepeju has also been awaiting trial. Luckily, it's not one of those people that was executed. It's also been expecting the hangman for the past 20 years. We have Ololade versus Ondo State government. These are cases we have filed in courts who are in prison, and they have been in prison for several years. We hopefully believe that if we are able to get judgment from these cases, pending the time we will be able to pass this, we will be able to reform and pass a new law and expressly abolish the death penalty by way of judicial precedent. We will get this penalty repealed through case laws. Human rights reformation and implementation and protection have really gone further than we are struggling to have it in Nigeria. In other countries, issues of death penalty have since been put behind them. And we're still struggling with this. And from experience, you and I will believe that the issue of death penalty in Nigeria, for as long as we have retained it in our penal law, has not even helped the matter. On the contrary, armed robbery and others have continued to increase. So if it has not helped the situation, why don't we look into it and see how we also can put some innovations and see how we can help the situation.
One of the things that Amnesty International, which also condemns this execution, one of the things they said is that the global trend favors moratorium. But it makes some people ask, this moratorium, is there any legal backing for it? Do we even recognize it in our laws? So why must we follow the global trends?
Yeah, you see, some countries, like I told you, some countries have really gone beyond what we have in Nigeria. We haven't gone there, but other countries already have it in their laws, included in their laws. But we aren't there yet. Here, sometimes when we went on one of our human rights workshops outside the country, and people were discussing same-sex marriage before our law, before our house of, we passed our law here, the house. And I said, well, you people, you are busy discussing same-sex marriage as human rights issues because you have been able to deal with several of your human rights issues. But we are still not there yet. When in my country, I still have the issues of free education to battle with, but people in my country do not have access to good water. They don't have access to Medicare. They don't have access to even good roads. They don't have access to all these socioeconomic rights, which you have been able to fight in your countries and you have won. So you can now sit back and begin to think and talk about expansion to the fifth generation rights, of same-sex marriage. But there are issues of even the primary We haven't left the primary, the first generation rights to talk of the second generation rights. So these are issues that we still have to contend with in Nigeria. It's very sad though, but I know we'll get there.
That's our interview segment and the program for today. By all means, let's continue the discussion via Facebook, email or Twitter. And if you missed any part of the program, you can watch again via YouTube /channels web. I'm Shola Soyele. Thank you for watching.